that they
That thing with Memorial, dropped the.
Proposed lease with College Show Tomorrow Foundation. The Symphony has approached the foundation to finish in the storage space as an air conditioned space to store their wood instruments. The donors that would pay for that construction would like some assurances that they would be able to remain in that space since it was purpose built, which then brought up that there is no formal lease or relationship between the city and the foundation. And so the agreement in front of you is based on the TRICOM agreement written out. It's been through SAM. And so this would essentially just formalize the working relationship we have with the College of Tomorrow Foundation and allow them to continue what they're doing, and then would allow them to enter into a lease agreement with the Symphony to store those woodwinds, which would then allow the donors to donate.
Where are they going to store them?
In the storage shed, they're going to repurpose roughly half of it and seal it in and put a mini split AC unit in.
Over by the office part? In
Yes.
the barn?
Yes, ma'am, the barn. That's what's proposed right now, but I wanted to bring this to you first so that we could start through that process before the donors get involved.
What would happen to the stuff that's already in there in the office?
They would clean out some of the excess items that they're storing and not using, and then use the remainder of the space.
Or where do they store it now?
I'm not certain. I believe they bring them in with a trailer.
So they're storing them at their own facility?
I believe so.
They store them in the music hall on the campus as a rule.
Mhm.
Are they going to use our facility more frequently?
They haven't said more frequently, but I believe that would be the goal.
So what are we doing from a security perspective?
Part of the remodel would be a much more secure door and a way to lock everything up.
And who's paying for the remodeling?
The donors.
So what about, to me, they've got lawnmower equipment in the, I'm gonna call it the barn for lack of better words. What about from a fire protection?
That
I
would
mean-
also be part of the remodel. They would need to do a rated wall to separate it off.
And ceiling?
Yes.
So we'll have more people frequently attending or coming to that area to either get stuff or,
Yes. There would be more coming and going. Yes.
So these aren't duplicate instruments. They're the same ones they would use on campus.
That's my understanding. I haven't gone into a detailed conversation of which instruments where. They just said that they needed to store the instruments and the donors indicated that they would pay to build a space. It's to the tune of probably $100,000. But in order to do so, we needed to, one, have a formal relationship with College of Tomorrow that would then allow them to enter into that agreement.
How would that impact, I don't know if I'm going to be saying this correctly or not, correct me if I'm wrong. Well, my concern is this. Once they get that and they build that, and of course it's supposedly a donation, and we allow them to do that, what are they going to expect in return other than just storing their stuff?
All the city would be on the hook for would be the lease with College of Tomorrow Foundation. The agreement between College of Tomorrow Foundation would just be the lease with them to store their stuff.
and we own the building.
We own the building right now.
But they run it. It's pretty much like we do with the library.
And that's
Oh,
how
I-
this lease is set up, is that basically they're leasing the commons facility from the city and can operate it.
Yeah, but any major change in everything, I think, has to come
Yes, I
Come
think it's
through
over
us to-
$15,000.
because it is our property. It's the city's property.
Yes, yes.
Yeah.
It's based on what we did with Tricom, kind of like how we have the old city hall that they operate out of.
Well, why are they wanting us to agree to this for them to have storage? Why aren't they storing it at the university where it's being stored now?
Well, they've indicated is that there's not storage space over there.
And so the college is not willing to provide, or they're not willing to donate their donors' money to facilitate a storage space there?
I haven't had those conversations with them. It was simply that they offered to build this facility at the Commons. And when I was looking through it, saw the need that we didn't have a formalized operating agreement with College of Tomorrow Foundation.
So what's in front of us is more in reference to the operating agreement with the Commons. Forget everything else about,
Correct. The genesis was.
right. I think we're getting distracted by,
But the genesis was the symphony, but what's in front of you is to formalize our working relationship with College of Tomorrow Foundation.
because for whatever reason, we've been operating without one.
Correct.
Me too.
Pardon?
I'm sitting here, Katie asked, Mayor Lamb asked what I was thinking too. We thought we had an agreement with them.
We have a loose, just understanding.
A memorandum.
Foundation. It's a memorandum, but it's not, we don't have a formal lease agreement or anything with them to use the facility. And this formalizes some of the insurance stuff, who insures what. for
And they're
instance.
wanting it for 20 years.
Yes, that came straight out of Tricom. There's an auto renewal, so if we wanted to cut that to say 10, we could.
I'm thinking 5 to see if we like it.
I think.
I mean,
you see how
because
it's being
Sam had
ran
recommended
and
10.
yeah.
My only concern is we get in there and our plans have changed what we want to do with stuff. Well, then we're kind of stuck with like the park.
So I have no problem pushing it down to 5, or we're going with the 10 Sam recommended. Again, the 20 just came out of the Tricom agreement, and that's how we got it in front of you.
I would be more comfortable with something less than 20,
Okay.
whether it's 5 or 10. I
Yeah.
can go either way, but 20 years? some of us won't be around then to complain.
I would be surprised if any of us are still working for the city in 20 years. So, okay, then we'll shorten it down. I'll talk to Sam and see where his recommendation for 10 came from. If it was arbitrary, then we can look at the 5. If there was a specific reason, then we can go with 10. I'll let you know.
I mean, this isn't anything odd. I mean, Finley Stadium has an agreement with Hamilton County, and
Yeah.
I mean, the fact that we've been operating without one is odd, and problematic.
Right.
I mean, I think there needs to be something in writing, a type of agreement, but I'm kind of like the vice mayor. I'm thinking the 20, because we're not going to be running the operations of it. But for say something that we have to start taking over or something for some reason, God forbid, we need to
Yep.
have a legal standing,
Okay,
okay?
that sounds good. And like I said, I'll
Or
reach out
some-
to Sam and see what the basis for his recommendation was. And then
Because I think
And-
what it is,
and I would like-
$100 a year, is that what it's saying?
I think so. It's, yes, $100 per year. The money was just to formalize the lease. It's not
Yeah.
anything specific.
And I guess I'm a little concerned too, is, I mean, do they not take their instrument home and practice? I mean,
That's correct.
well, I mean, it's not just students, is it? Isn't it?
To be
People
real
who's-
frank, I didn't get very far into the details with the symphony. I just was concerned about our relationship with the foundation. Why they need that specific storage space is, I just don't know.
But here's my concern too, and this has come across a few times. This is before we had talked about in the planning stages and everything. And I backed the symphony 100%, but whoever it was like it was more becoming like they were being ownership, and it's not, it's a community. And I wanted to make sure that that's what it's for. It's just not narrowed down to one exact person having control of everything.
Correct. Anything
It's-
that's done over there, one has to go past their board for community interest. And then above, I think it's $15,000 comes to you to also be.
Now, there's 2 orchestras. Are we talking about the East
Tennessee?
Tennessee Community Orchestra, or are we talking about the University Orchestra?
The symphony that plays each year at
East
Tennessee.
Tennessee,
Oh,
yeah.
that's
East Tennessee, yeah.
that's not Tennessee.
So that's why I was wondering, I mean,
Yeah,
Yeah, it's the symphony that plays each year.
yeah.
now I guess if they're putting their, I don't know, whatever they use, the stands for music and stuff, but
But now, if they do that, of course, it becomes part of the ownership of the building, which we as a city own the building. Is there something there to state that, if they're turning it over to us as a donation in writing so that they have no control if they decide to leave or if something
The
occurs?
building would
we're
remain ours.
protected.
Contents are not.
I think something that might be good to clarify in this is that any subletting of the facilities comes before this body.
Yeah.
I think that's where the headache is coming from, is
Okay.
a misunderstanding there.
and I don't think they need to sublet it.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, and that may be the body's opinion is not to sublet it in the future. But I think that, because there's nothing in here that says anything about
Right. It's,
the use of the facilities that are ours for long-term. It's just talking about events.
Mhm.
But other than that, I think like if we were having some process of subletting, maybe either saying none at all or having a process to come before this body. So that way we're still,
so my suggestion would be, let's put a process in, and that process would come to the commission, and if the commission's opinion.
On
is
case
not
by
at all,
case.
That's fine,
Yeah.
but
But now, is it allowed that the symphony and all that, they use the facility free anyway? Or do they pay to have their concerts there?
they're typically free, is my
That's what I thought.
understanding.
Yeah,
Because it's a community event.
yeah, it's a community event.
Right, the city usually sponsors. But so that would be my suggestion. Let's add subletting to come to y'all for approval, kind of that hedge on what happens in the future. And
and when I say subletting, I'm meaning like a long-term
yes,
usage agreement, not the Apple Festival leasing the property for the weekend. I'm talking about,
right, something in excess of 30 days.
yeah,
Yeah.
Some language that Sam will have.
yeah. That way this body still retains control of how the buildings are used for long-term purposes.
Sounds good. I'll have that added. Anything else?
So I think
Still
that
got a lot of
would be less
questions,
than
so
20.
whenever it comes up.
I think 20 is probably, I mean, I think it's long, but most places have up to even to 100 years leasing something, but I'm kind of like with the mayor.
Well, if it's through
I want
us
that.
and foundation, I have no problems with it, but when it comes to, maybe we have a separate one for the building.
Yeah.
I mean, this is just between us and the commons, right? It's not really about the building itself.
It's the usage of all the buildings on the,
I saw that, but I mean, it doesn't say really that they were going to add to it or make changes to it.
right, that would need to come back in front of you.
So,
That's the reason why I suggested adding that language about
yeah,
subleasing
Mhm.
and things like that. That-
on the 8 acres, I saw that in all the buildings, but to me, that's between us and the commons, not Southern or ETSU. or-
Right. Absolutely. This would be just with the College
the
of Tomorrow
Commons, yeah.
Foundation.
And then we need to decide if we want to allow them to
So,
build and sublease that out.
correct.
Because I've got another 20 questions on that piece of it, so. Okay,
And I am not prepared to answer those questions, I'll tell you. Okay. So the next item on tonight's agenda is the public hearing format. And after the last several, or one case that had lots of public input, I felt like it would be good to open up the floor to discuss if there's a better way to manage it in the future. The county allows the applicant to speak for 7 minutes, the audience to speak for 9, and then the applicant to rebut or answer questions for an additional 2. And whatever is said in those 18 minutes is what is said in those 18 minutes, and it's up to each party to be concise and get it done in that length of time. I don't know if we want to be that strict or if that is a reasonable enough amount of time to speak at multiple hearings to convey an idea in addition to all the other ways you're communicated with. Or we could handle it on a case-by-case basis, but it'd probably be better to have at least a framework on how we expect to handle.
I think we need to have a process. Now, I'm open to more than 9 minutes, because I understand, Chattanooga and Hamilton County's got their ways, but
That's just a
think-
data point.
yeah, I think we need to look at, is 10 to 12 or 12 to 15 enough time? Honestly, I think we need to communicate out to the public.
Mhm.
You need to have a spokesperson, like Chattanooga does, or Hamilton County for the most part. They need to come prepared with talking points. And then address it that way, because we heard over and over, animals, infrastructure, and they never heard us talk about infrastructure. And we talked about it both in the public hearing, and then we talked about it in the planning piece of it and the other meetings. I mean, we talked about Empire was going to have to do stuff for us. Now, the bridge came after the fact, a little bit later after the second study. But, we talked about they're going to have roadway improvements, and it's just like they never heard it. And I think we could head off some of this because we cannot impact what, number one, Hamilton County Schools does. And that is truly a Board of Education issue and the school board issue. We cannot touch that. People have the right to move to Collegedale. I looked for 2.5 years trying to get a 1-story house during the market shortage, and there was no houses to be found. And if there was, then unfortunately they went like hotcakes. And I don't think that's fair to people who want to move here. Now, I think we're all aware of the feelings of the people, the community. But like I said too, when Homewood came into the mix of Tucker Road and Edgemont, we heard the same thing. It did not turn out to be as bad. So you have Misty Valley and you've got Homewood. Yes, we're adding more homes, but it's an 8-year project. And by then, who knows what's going to happen to Lee Highway? And I think we need to make sure that we address it to the state, lanes all the way from the honors course up through Bradley County or Pass.
So the study phase was added, which is a 20-year horizon before they would move to construction, which is another 12. That's the priority that the state currently sees it as until the trips per day keep going up.
Yeah.
Or there's a change in mindset at Region 2.
So it's unfortunate. I mean, I think that we talked about it and people were so opinionated, they did not really stop and listen. And I would have still been in my house on Edgemond Road for 24 years. And to this day, I have never seen water go across Edgemond Road. Billy, you probably have. I haven't. And maybe I don't get out, but I know that we've been to a lot of houses that have flooded off of, you went out there with me in Public Works in one of the subdivisions because of the way the builder did it. But I've never seen the other side of Edgemond flood. And I get out quite a bit, so I'm not sure how I missed that.
Are you talking about where they built the, a few years back, they came and it was the horse, I don't want to say horse barn because they spent over $1 million doing it. The family that wanted to do that because of Escree and having.
No,
horses or
I'm talking
something.
about the house that flooded because the people who owned it were real estate agents.
Yeah.
Or she was. And they blamed it on grindstones flooding them.
Oh, okay.
And it wasn't. It's more of the drainage, the way the builder filled it in and
They built the house 2 quarters a block below the road.
yeah.
I remember that now.
So
So
that particular one.
What other means do residents of the city have to address issues, other than the public forum?
So they can submit comments in writing by email through the planning email address. They can call same through the planning. I know that they emailed most of the commissioners, if not all of you, call you as well to voice their opinions. Sometimes, unfortunately, the answer is not what they want to hear. And I think in that was the case some of the times here recently. The idea of it remaining a horse barn forever is not realistic. That property has been marketed for a very long time and it changed hands. So,
and unfortunately, they bought property outside of Collegedale in Bradley County. When they tried to raise money through a GoFundMe, nobody supported them except for a few. There was not a lot of money raised.
What were they raising the money for?
So they would not sell the property. The Chastains wouldn't sell it from whatever her name is, Tara, whoever it is. There. Yeah, so, and they didn't get a lot of money raised, so.
Well, I think too, in retrospect, there's a lot of things that go on that we are bound by legally on a state level, federal level, that people aren't aware of.
Mhm.
And I don't think, even though that was mentioned in one of the meetings, they weren't receptive to that. Because we're bound by laws, and until you sit on this side of the podium up there, a lot of people don't understand that. So I think maybe we need to be a little bit more, try to explain a little bit more clearly. This is, we can't go this route because this is what the state law says. We don't change the state law. I mean, what comes down, trickling through federal and state, we can't change that. We have to abide by it. I think that's an issue because a lot of them didn't want to hear that. They didn't understand that. A lot of them just did not want to understand it. It's a lot easier to swallow a pill if you like it.
There was a lot of emotion.
There was.
Statements that were made that we can't combat. And I think that,
A little louder, Katie.
I'm sorry.
Can't hear you. Yeah, Artie.
I'm sorry. I'll talk right into it. There was a lot of emotion in the statements that were made, and we can't do anything about that. And I think that it was a no-win situation as far as the city was concerned. We have to look at the future of the city, not just what a few people want. And I think that the individuals who were against it, that was part of the family, could have helped us by backing up on some of the things they had said to the people. some of the information that were in some of the letters and emails that I received had false information in it. And there was, there's no way that I could have corrected all of that because they wouldn't have believed me. And so it was just a no-win situation for us in the city.
Unfortunately, a lot of people, and it's in every area of business and politics and all, lots of times they want to just convey what they want you to hear in order for you to side with them. So they don't necessarily, they're not lying, but they evade the truth,
But it's,
which is lying, but they evade the truth because they don't give the true adequate picture of what's going on. And it makes it difficult.
Talk about a no-win situation. I thought Katie was my friend. We taught together for many years at Southern. And I took it kind of as an honor when she asked if she could put my name in for filling out Phil's term. And I hadn't been following city politics. I had no idea there was this big conflict out there. I didn't do my homework. I thought I'd come and vote on a few budgets and requests by departments. And, I could do that for 3.5 months.
I'm glad you did that.
Well, I'm not, right. Here's what I was faced immediately with this great controversy. And I had two choices, vote yes or no on these ordinances. And if I voted no, then all of you people in this room have said, what's he doing? I mean, he came in, he doesn't know what's going on, doesn't trust us, what we've been working on for years and years. If I vote yes, then I have 1,000 people that don't like me, all of these people out there. And I did, all of us, in fact, I didn't pay a whole lot of attention. I was going to I had confidence in all of you people, and I was just supporting you. Everybody I'd talked to, and I didn't talk to any commissioners. I didn't think we were supposed to, were we? I couldn't talk to any commissioners. So I talked to Wayan, and I talked, of course, David Bardo is my Google for what's going on around Collegedale, and they all sold it. I mean, and so I thought, I'm not going to raise any question. I'm going to vote yes. And then after the first vote, I got a lot of flack from people that I got all the emails the rest of you got, and I could see that I was heading for trouble, whatever way I voted. But then we got this packet at the end after the first, we all got this, and I read it the next day, Tuesday, spent a lot of time on it. This was from concerned citizens living in the Hidden Valley Farm area. And I called the guy, I don't know if any of you know him, David Golden. I'd never heard of him before. He lives in Misty Valley. And I said, well, I looked it over and I thought they have some legitimate concerns here. And I said, how did you guys get together? There were about 5 of them. They had issues on the International Fire Code, building in the floodplain, traffic study accuracy, and soil survey. And he said they didn't know each other. I guess you guys had, what, a 2 or 3 hour session of, and this is what you're getting at here, I
Planning
guess.
Commission.
Planning Commission. And he said, we paid attention to what people were saying, and about 5 of us had concerns. So we got together and developed this. And I had a couple issues there. The fire code, it looked to me like they had an issue with the fire code. And I kind of looked into it and decided to, I emailed the fire marshal. And now his father had passed, and I think he was at a memorial service, but he got back to me and said, well, I sent him what they had said here. I sent him a copy of the fire, the issue of the fire code. And I said, please make a comment on it. So I'd like you to read this and let me know your thoughts on it. And he never did get back to me. And you know, I wanted to get back by the time we had our second vote. I wanted to know what was going on that. He never got back to me. That raised a question in my mind. And then in looking over the codes here, zoning ordinances of Collegedale, I noticed in the part on PUDs, planned residential developments, and it had a lot of different ordinances on that, but one of them was all lots shall front property dedicated in public streets. Anyway, the third one here was single-family building lots shall front a public street for a minimum of 50 feet with a minimum depth of 110. And we had 85 homes in this development plot that were 35 feet. So I raised that issue. I raised it with Wayne, and Wayne said he'd get back to me, but it was after the fact, because when Mike Price, you know, we did have these people speaking, a few people, what did it go, about 20 minutes or something like that, where people addressed the issues. And David Golden and another one addressed these issues, and I thought they did a pretty good job. And but Mike stood up immediately and said they're wrong. And I guess he gave a reason, but I couldn't follow. This is why I'd like to see questions written to people, and getting to somebody's hands, and then a written response, because you know, in verbal exchanges, you can't pin down what people are saying. Now, Mike is an impressive fellow, very impressive fellow, and it finally dawned on me that Mike was the representative of Empire Residentials, and that was his business, going around paving the way for developments. And I'm sure he put a lot of money into it. And I thought, man, if we put as much money into somebody looking at the other side of it as that company has put into Mike, you know, there might be a different outcome here. Now, I have no idea whether we did the right thing or the wrong thing. I'm not a prophet, and I can't tell what's going to happen in the future. There were a lot of good arguments for it, but also there are a lot of good arguments. I mean, you know, traffic is a problem out there. And, but anyway, so those two things, the next morning, no, actually during the meeting on this past Monday, after everybody spoke and Mike, you know, told everybody that all these people were wrong on their issues. I thought I had remembered reading this, that no lots were allowed less than 50 feet by 110 feet. And I brought that to Mike's attention. I don't know if you remember or not, but he seemed to be unaware of it, but just brushed it off. And so then the next day I called Wayne about it, and Wayne had to, I think what's happening here is that we relied on Mike for everything, that, you know, all of Mike's experience could get us through whatever they wanted, more or less. And
I would
so-
disagree with that.
what's that?
I would disagree with that. There's an independent staff assessment of the project.
Well, no, I agree, but
Before Mike was
we didn't
involved.
have a planner working on it, from what I understand.
We did
He
under
quit
their
early
initial
on.
submission.
He just quit right before.
Didn't he quit just before it started almost?
Well,
No, he reviewed the initial submission
Yeah.
and the 6 months of meetings with Empire prior to their submission.
Oh, he was involved in all
Correct.
of this.
Mike was
Yeah.
not hired
Okay.
until
And did we have a city engineer?
we still do and have.
I mean, somehow I got the idea you had wearing lots of hats during this.
I am
You were
a-
the city
Chris-
engineer, you're the city manager,
Yes.
and you were the
Correct.
city planner, but that's wrong.
Correct. Kelly was here up until right before the first public hearing, but wrote the initial staff report.
Uh-huh.
And Jason has since come on. Mike wasn't hired until much later in the process, when their original engineer was not moving things along as quickly.
When you say the original city engineer?
No, sir, the original engineer for Empire.
Oh, Empire had someone, see, I mean, I'm not ignorant on all of this, and I should have turned down Katie, that's what I should have done. But I did. And,
Forgive me.
I
Don't ruin
did-
our friendship.
what's that?
I said, please forgive me. Don't ruin our friend, let it ruin our friendship.
I'll think about forgiving you. I'll see what I'll do.
I will state, I don't know if this will make a difference or not. I think it was the second meeting, because I came to the planning commission, I sat in the back. And I was sitting in the back, and beside me was a gentleman. We got to talking. At first I didn't know who he was.
Uh-huh.
And so we got to talking, and he was here representing the fire marshal. And so I asked him, because, and the question had come up right before I had asked him, or right after I asked him, I said, well, what do you think about this? I mean, is everything within code for the fire marshal? Or there's some concerns? He said, we approve it. He said, we approve the plans as they were, what they were at that time, what they were. I said, so, okay. And he said, and I'm here to answer any questions that anyone may have. And at that time,
He
He
was
was asked-
representing the
the fire
fire
marshal.
marshal?
Yes, he was.
What was his,
I can't remember his name, to be honest with you, but
What-
he was asked to, they asked if there was anybody here. We
what was
said we
his
had-
position? I mean, what was he representing them from?
I think he was his assistant.
Yeah, from
Because he had some
Yeah,
clout.
From Tricom.
What's that?
That, he would have been from Tricom because the concerns with the IFC were worked out with the fire marshal prior, because there was a
Yeah.
30-day extension for those things to be worked out. So all of that was addressed. The comments regarding not being able to build a stormwater pond in the floodway was incorrect, and that was addressed. But really, the crux to this question was the public hearing format, and do we want to
Well, yeah,
set
but
a time limit?
that's part of what I'm saying is because afterwards, I talked to, after the meeting, I talked to this David Golden, and, you know, he felt that Mike had the last word. You know, they made their speech and Mike stood up and said they were wrong, and you know, he felt we didn't get a chance to disagree with the fact that we were wrong. So this is the sort of thing that happens in public hearing where I think we ought to bend over backwards to let people know what's going on and let them know that if they have concerns, put them in writing, tell them who to submit them to, and expect a written response. You know, not, you get verbal, and what people say, it doesn't register with us. And I think somehow these people ought to be responded to by some authority in a written manner that they can, and go back, and if they want to disagree again, or sooner or later, they have to give up. But they feel that they were not listened to. They were not, they had their questions and nobody responded to them. And I had the two experiences that, you know, I had questions and I didn't get any response.
They can submit through the planner at college.tn.gov any specific questions. We can forward those on to the developer and send them written responses.
Is this made plain to everybody?
It's on the website with the plan and the agenda.
Okay.
At some point in time, there was 3 hours of public comment on this
Right.
issue.
Yeah.
How much more are we expected to give? And again, the question tonight is, do we want to formalize an amount of time for hearings at Planning Commission and?
But I
public
think if we
hearing?
do this, we've got to make sure that people can write their concerns out. These people didn't. The only thing they had was to get up in public forum and make their statements. Well, anyway, that's what I have. Those are my comments on your item here.
I also think it's important to have them clarify if they're residents of the city of Collegedale or if they're community members, because this is going to sound really bad. I'll probably regret it in the future, but I care what the residents of Collegedale have to say. I don't care about a petition that was signed by people from California and Colorado and Bradley County. Like, Bradley County can go develop their own way, but I want to know what Collegedale residents care about. And in the last couple of years, Collegedale meetings have been hijacked by community members, and we need to be a great community friend and get along with everybody. But for too long, this city has been pushed around, shoved around by different areas, and it's time that we as a body listen to what our residents want
Yeah.
and not the outside influence. That's the whole point of having city and city bounds, is for the cultural will within those bounds. So I think in the process of clarifying who is representative of what groups. I know it's public, I know it's government, but this is a Collegedale meeting. Chattanooga's had problems with hijacks from Atlanta and other problems. At some point, the people's business of Collegedale gets hindered in that process when it's hijacked by outsiders. So that was just an observation on what I saw. I know the charter states that, or the municipal code states that during public hearings, each speaker gets 5 minutes maximum, and that's it. And then each commissioner gets 2 minutes, 5 minutes, something that we've never really followed. But there is a process in which things happen, and I think decorum is very important. This nation is degrading quickly because we're not listening to one another, and we're yelling and screaming, and meetings are getting hijacked. If you've seen the school board meetings across the state, and it could easily happen in one of these meetings as well. But once again, those are usually by outside actors. So I'm all for changing the process, but as Commissioner Hanson says, we do need to make sure that we're clear to everybody so they're aware. But I also, there was 3.5, 4 hours worth of public comment over a 2-month period. That's a lot. I mean, the city bent over backwards to hear the public's opinion on this matter. They just did not like the answers that they were getting on a regular basis. And just because your truth is your truth doesn't mean that it's not the truth, or it is the truth. So that's the way I'd look at it. And I don't know if going back to the way that we used to do things, where the public hearing was heard the first meeting. So that way, I know it throws off the advertising and different things like that, but it does allow for the public to have input a week, 2 weeks to go by, so that way we can respond and then take the vote.
Yeah, I was a little surprised that, because at the very end, there's not much time between then we vote. And one other thing I want to mention is some of the issues that came up with these people were because this was not updated. The fire code, the number, evidently, I don't know if the number of the size of the lots was updated, so it should have been different in here. You know, how that, I don't know how that worked out, but if they go to a lot of trouble to make their comments on the basis of what's here, and they find out that it's been updated and this is not right. So we really need to make sure that when we enter something like this, that the most updated ordinance.
And we have a project starting in January to do a major revision of the zoning ordinance to catch most of it.
Well,
So I would like to recommend we do 15 minutes. I think that's a fair amount
15 minutes.
for the public comment.
Per side.
And I'd like to see if we could get questions in writing.
How about Jason and I will write up a recommendation, send it to everyone. And unless there's anyone that specifically disagrees, we'll put that up on the website with where we post the agendas for both commission meetings and planning commission. As a more formal process, this is how we're going to do it. We can use the 15 minutes as a guideline. It probably is still best to have the applicant speak and the applicant have a chance to rebut, give them the same total amount of time. The applicant typically would have the last word to answer the questions raised and it not turn into a back and forth. But how about Jason and I'll do that over the coming weeks, make a recommendation and then post it as a more formal process with submitted questions that we can then forward on to the developer to answer or address in their remarks, et cetera.
is there something too that we could, at a public hearing, have something that they would pick up and say, this is the format?
We can certainly add that.
So that they are reminded if they wish to speak, this is what they need to follow?
We can certainly do that. Red Bank has had some success with a flyer that they used for that sort of thing, and we can take that, modify it to fit our needs and hand it out. It's a little formal and it's a little more rigid than we're probably used to, but there's some benefit.
No matter how many times I have reminded people at the beginning not to repeat what someone else has already given, give us new information. It never follows through. And I hesitate to say, you know, that's been stated already. Do you have something different you want to say? I can do that, or whoever's in charge could do that. And maybe that's what should be done. But that this last time, our last speaker just kept repeating and repeating himself. And
I think too, there needs to be something maybe visual that prompts them to know what the proper etiquette is expected instead of screaming and hollering across the room at each other and stuff like that.
I think even with that, they wouldn't have done it.
The people that are going to,
They need to, so that others that do have something to say that we need to hear, it doesn't take away from their time in order to say what they need to say.
I wanted to tell them that we were not at a pep rally. This was a government meeting and needed to have some decorum.
And they were very not respectful of you for that because we have business to take care of and we're trying to listen. We're trying to do what's right.
we'll do that then. We'll get that flyer, get it modified over the coming weeks, and then write up a recommendation, send it to you, and post it on the website for all of the commission meetings and public hearings, et cetera.
I mean, and the body, Robert's rules allows for the suspension of any rule and new meeting rules to be instituted at every single meeting if the governing body majority agrees. So nothing was done wrong in the mayor limiting things, as long as no one objects. But I think that's something to remember
Yes.
as well.
So I think we're going to talk about medical premiums now.
Yes, we are.
Are you anxious to go home?
Yes.
All right, so good news. I'll run through it really, really quickly. So premiums are actually down this year, 6 and some change percent. Yields a savings roughly of $69.5 for the city. It'd be about $5 a pay period for most employees. What we would like to do, currently the city does not contribute to dental like some of our peers do. We would like to contribute at the same percentage for dental as we do for medical, which is 88%, which would yield a savings of roughly about $50 for a family plan for the employees, which would cost about $38,300, which would still yield us a net savings of $31,200 roughly, but would allow us to match some of our peers in terms of benefits by contributing towards dental as well as medical. And we would not include the completely free for key managers. It would just be the 88% is what our recommendation is to y'all. It still keeps us $31,000 under the budgeted amount for this year, and it'll save our employees roughly $60 a month for a family plan. So a little over $700 a year.
So does it cover everything else? Eyes?
We don't pay on eyes, but the premiums are just a couple of dollars right now, and the coverage is, yeah. But it would keep the medical the same and then include that benefit for dental, and 76% of employees are carrying dental right now, so it would have the greatest effect across the city. All righty, so if there's no questions, we'll move to staff reports. Chief Sapp.
I just wanted to let everyone know that the purchase of the second K-9 did finally become finalized last week. So we do now have Prino, and he should be getting deployed to the road shortly once we get our second K-9 vehicle up and running. Happy to report we're going to graduate 4 new reserves this week. They'll be out on the street, and then we'll probably look at doing another reserve academy in the spring. And then lastly, just to kind of keep it on your radar, here in the very near future, I'll probably be coming forward and asking for approval of purchases for the new Glocks that we've discussed a little bit. It was budgeted. And once we kind of get everything finalized, I'll make sure you guys have all the information. And if you have any questions on that, but that, just to have that on your radar, that'll be coming up in the future.
You had a pretty good turnout Saturday night, didn't you?
We did. We had a very
Nice.
successful national night out. It was
Yeah.
a good turnout. It was kind of a double-edged sword because we kind of intentionally, it was our makeup date, of course, but then with the festival going on, we thought that might draw some more foot traffic. And I think it did in some capacities, but I heard from some officers that when they were trying to motion people over, people were just tired of a long day at the festival. So I don't know if we'll do that again next year, but it was a great event and a very successful turnout.
I'm sorry, what did you say the second dog's name is?
Crino,
Reno.
Mhm.
Crino?
Krino.
Krino.
Yeah, we'll do a media release and social stuff release once we
Okay.
should be here in the next couple of days.
Question, since that's brought up, do we have really good vests for our dogs? I mean, they're okay, bulletproof vests and everything, or?
Crino has a vest, and I've had a couple of companies already reach out to me to donate funds for Goose. So that's working. I mean, we budgeted the money, but
Mm.
if we end up getting some donations in, then that just helps for
Okay,
further
good.
equipment. We're also looking at getting some grant money for new canine programs that will allow for training equipment, vests, et cetera. There's also another grant that the state just released. It looks like if we can get it, we'll be eligible for about $93,000 for next year through the state. And part of that grant includes approval, the funds to be approved for vests for officers and for canines. So
Oh, good, good, good.
Goose was having a good time Saturday night.
Yeah, he
when I
was.
there.
yeah, he got his own stickers and everything.
He was excited.
Andrew,
Nothing new to report tonight.
Ryan,
Nothing new to report tonight as well.
Christina.
Just let you know that tonight and tomorrow, we are partnering with the library, helping them run their escape room. And we expanded it to 2 nights and are completely sold out. So we're super excited about it and ready to share some puzzles with your and lots of kids and families. So there's about 40 families coming through every hour. So a lot of folks coming through the library tonight and tomorrow. Also, I hope you guys have all admired our lovely scarecrows that are out there on Aspen Pike. We still got a few more submissions that haven't made it up there, but those will be on display up through November 7th. And then we will have our judges pick a winner, and those people will receive a gift card to one of our College Dale businesses. And then last but not least, we're bringing back our line dancing. It's still been a really big hit. Unfortunately, we haven't been able to do it more than once a month. But we are trying our darndest to get them to be able to do more. But even last month, no, this month, it's still October, we had folks dress up in Halloween costumes. And it was really fun. So it's been a nice day to just rolling out programs like we always do.
Wade and I got notification, I guess last week, that we will get the other half of the federal money, the 1.6 million and change, sometime very soon, the next few weeks. So that will be great.
Very good.
Commissioner White.
I have nothing tonight except to say that this is my last workshop. It's been an honor to be with y'all for the last 8 years. I'll say more at my last meeting, hopefully in a couple weeks, not longer. But thank you guys so much, and staff, keep up the hard work, and Godspeed to all of y'all.
Commissioner Hanson.
Nothing more. I haven't say.
Okay. I've probably said enough already.
Vice Mayor Johnson.
So parking was an issue this weekend, so
Yeah.
I want to make a comment. I think we need to discuss with David leaving the number of vendors at something we can manage from a parking perspective. And I don't know if that's 60 to 75, somewhere in those numbers, but we cannot have unlimited vendors come in with a parking issue. And I would like the city to approach the owners of the property across the street from the library and purchase that property.
I can ask.
I know you can ask, and that's why I'm bringing it up. I think we really need to think about, because it is such a, if we use that property, we're allowed to use it under like 4th of July, but and we have to sign paperwork, hold harmless and all that. Honestly, I don't know that they're going to be able to sell it to use for restaurants because I heard there's an issue with some of the agreements from another vendor or another restaurant, but I think we need to look at if that's an opportunity.
I can ask.
They do need to spread out more. It's like
Yep.
claustrophobic in there when you went through,
Yep.
or when I went through both days.
If they're interested in selling, it'll be a large number. But I'll reach out and see where their starting point is.
Yeah. And the final thing, I know we've talked about Empire a lot. I don't think people heard from Mike and from the planning workshops and meetings that, yes, they wanted 591 homes. It was reduced because they listened to the citizens and reduced that down to 512, eliminate all the townhomes that people thought were too tall for that area. And I don't think people realize that today, agriculture, they could build 408 homes regardless, and we would not have a say in any restrictions. And they would not have to put in all the infrastructures that we're requiring of Empire. So I think we said it multiple times in different venues. I just don't think it was a listening. It is 500, it's 112 homes different. Is that what it is? 408 from 512, so 104. It still makes a lot of cars traffic. It does. But I think that when you try to communicate, and maybe we need to do a better job in getting the information out on the website about a development like this, I don't think we can always put it back on the developer to put it out there. I mean, if we did some of the, and I'm thinking retrospectively here, we all have thoughts about what we could have done differently. If we had done that a little differently, maybe we could have had a better conversation. And people still may have been as upset, but at least they had the facts for them. That's all I got.
Mayor Lamb?
Speaking of parking, what is the status of the property that we were going to use for parking? Is that not going to be available to us?
We are in design, and I'm going to push to start getting our permits in the early spring, January, March timeline. And then I'll come back to you with a harder number and a bond for the construction. Bond rates have gone up, unfortunately. They just have. So we'll circle back. I'm expecting in that March-ish timeline with some harder numbers and a bond to do the construction.
Remember, I'm on the bond fund board.
Well, can we get it at half rate?
Yeah.
No, but I can say a good word. I can vote. I have a question about short-term rentals. I got an email from a person that works with cities on short-term rentals. In his email to me, he said that he has noticed a large uptick in the short-term rentals within our city limits. And I was just wondering, is this something that we're seeing? Do we know how many's in the city now? And are they all registered so that we get the fees that the city is supposed to get from this? I was just curious because I know that they have a group in Hamilton County Commission looking at it. And I wondered how we're being affected because I believe there's one near my house, but I can't prove it.
Yeah, I can pull up tomorrow a report of that information and email it to you all. But we currently contract with a company, and the whole purpose, they have specific way to identify these. I don't know exactly how they do it, but they have some software or way to pull in, and they also help work with us to send out letters of notification. Hey, you're currently in violation. You need to register with the city, and that kind of stimulates a conversation with getting the paperwork in process where they can be properly registered and so on and so forth.
Well, the one that I'm pretty sure is in my neighborhood is not bothering anybody
Sure.
that I'm aware of. But I just wanted to make sure that we as a city they were going through the proper registration with us and making sure that the fees were there, because there's different cars there every weekend.
Sure.
And during the week, there's nobody there.
Yeah. And from time to time, we battle with some of these people that will catch them on
Mhm.
Airbnb or VRBO. And then they'll come back and change it from like 28 days to like 34 days, which then moves it into a longer term rental. So it's kind of a frustrating process sometimes that we deal with, but we definitely are staying on top of that and keeping the fire on them to register and keep registered and maintain the properties, if you will.
I'm going to forward this person's
Sure.
email to you and weigh in.
Okay,
So
great.
you,
Sure, that'd be fun.
I get stuff like this all the time and I don't know what to do with most of it.
Yeah. send
So
it.
I fill his box full.
Yeah, I'd be happy to look into it.
That's all I have.
And we'll adjourn.